So if you want to send a song to somebody like, hey, let me know what you think real quick, I could email a rough mix to somebody rather than wrap this tape up and have an intern drive it across town. Hopefully the post office won't delete everything on it when it goes through their x-ray system or whatever. I don't know. Just send it to LA to let someone hear it. Like, oh no, I didn't like it. Send it back. Add this to it. Like, that would take weeks. I don't know. Right now I can drop it in a Dropbox folder and they'll have it instantaneously. Listen to it in 3 minutes. I'll have notes back. Say, hey, try this.
I'm going to say I think today digital is better. And here's why. Here's my case.
I'm not low quality MP3 digital. I'm a high class man.
Broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee, offering a glimpse inside the music industry, shedding light on things they don't want you to know, and exposing some of the industry's biggest secrets. You're listening to the Turned Up Podcast, presented by Real Sound Productions. Here are your hosts, Jake Jones.
Not that I ever illegally downloaded music.
And Robert Venable.
Jake Jones never illegally downloaded music.
Good morning. Listen, I'm going to say good morning because last Monday, I didn't get the podcast out till Monday evening, and I honestly didn't think anyone would notice, and I can't tell you how many emails and Instagram, Twitter, Facebook messages that we got. Where's the podcast? Where's the podcast? So,
yeah,
it is going out.
If we say morning, that's
5 a.m.
That's some pressure.
Monday morning.
Okay, done.
As per usual.
Well, then, good morning.
Good morning, you Monday morning commuters. And if you're listening to this Monday evening or any other time during the week, well, you missed it.
This is going to be a good episode. We're going to talk about /debate /research. I don't know what you want to call it.
Just, can you get a few more slashes in there?
I was going to, but I think AC/DC took them all. Ooh, music joke. We're going to, no, Guns N' Roses, dang it.
I thought you meant AC/DC because it's AC/DC.
I pictured slash and said AC/DC.
Between AC/DC and Guns N' Roses, all the slashes are taken.
Yeah, between both of those bands, there are no more slashes for me to use. But we're going to do all of that stuff to the analog versus digital debate. So
I love technology.
That's from Napoleon Dynamite.
But not as much as you see.
But I still love technology. Always and forever.
And that's been this week's episode of the Turned Up Podcast.
I was doing the music.
Oh, that was good.
Thank you.
That's good. I've heard that song before.
No, you haven't. I just made that one up. So before we get any started, I'd like to talk to you about my friend Jake Jones. Jake Jones, standing at approximately 6'2" while standing, and then we talked about this before, approximately 3'8" while sitting.
A little shorter today. I'm sitting on a couch.
Yeah, like a futon couch thing, like kind of slouched down. Regardless, standing at 6'2", which is great. Being the shortest member of the band as we ascend, which is interesting.
And still the shortest man in this room.
Wow, that's true. We'll get to that in a second because there's not just you and I today. But you do sing and play guitar for the band as we ascend. You used to play guitar in the band We As Human. And man, you're doing great. Your lessons are paying off.
Yeah.
You also have awards on the wall. #1 Billboard charting song that you've written and produced and mixed and engineered. Not just #1s, you have all over the charts songs, multiples at a time. We have awards that I've seen that for Rock Band of the Year, awards that you have played guitar and written and sang and mixed and engineered and produced for.
Keep going. I'm liking this.
So besides that, you also have a recording studio like I do. And you work with all the best bands and most of the worst bands.
All of them.
Just kidding. Whatever, man. And I'm very proud to call you one of my best friends in the entire universe, even going back to the Amoeba days. And one thing that I've learned about you that most everyone else, I don't even think your own mother knows this about you, is that you have a small collection of film canisters. And inside, well, I'll let you tell it. What is inside of each of those film canisters, Jake?
So these foam canisters that you have seen, if you ever walk into my studio, they are everywhere. If you've been in my studio and haven't noticed them, you've at least sat on 5 or 6 of them at any given moment. They are actually baby teeth. Not my baby teeth.
That's what I said. The funny thing is, it's not from you.
So a lot of kids believe in this myth about the tooth fairy.
Not the myth that it's real, because we know that the tooth fairy is real, but the myth about the tooth fairy that is.
I actually go around handing out money to small children for their teeth, because ultimately we all know that after the zombie apocalypse, money will be worthless, and the only true currency is going to be children's teeth. So
Baby teeth.
that is why I have a vast collection of baby teeth in film canisters, and it's I'm running out of space. But trust me, when that apocalypse comes, I will be very grateful that I have been doing all this work for the last 200 or 300 years.
Best soundproofing ever. Just film canisters of teeth hidden in the walls.
They make good shakers too.
Okay.
I heard Can O Tambos is they offered me a contract to start recording shaker noises for them with
the teeth collection.
That is so gross. Teeth.
I don't know.
Just teeth. Anything with teeth is just gross.
Yeah, I know. Even inside of mouths, they just need to go away. I don't know. Well, they don't go away. That's even worse.
My friend Robert Venable.
Go on.
Award-winning. I'm looking at his gold records and #1 plaques, and then you literally have a box full of like awards and accolades that I think every time you open the box, angels sing.
That's that sound.
That's what that sound is. And you know that you've accomplished a lot when you have so many that you physically don't have enough room for them anymore. And so I'm looking at your Rock Album of the Year award right here on your desk, your rack full of miles and miles of gear that's each one more expensive than anything I will ever own for the rest of my life.
Doubt it.
Beautiful studio, beautiful voice, beautiful drum playing skills. You were just a beautiful human being.
Thank you.
Robert Venable was just in a movie. You need to go check it out. It's called Days of Power.
You need to go check that out it's on demand somewhere.
He's an actor. He does work for films, movies, TVs. He's a songwriter. The guy literally just does absolutely everything in music, and it blows me away. It makes me a little bit sick to my stomach every time he tells me about the next thing that he's working on, because it's always something really, really cool.
We're about to do something really cool today. We can't talk about it yet.
Right?
Watch social media for it.
So a little thing. Now, most of you probably already know this about Robert, but for the few of you that don't, including Robert, I'm sure, Robert actually has a very large paper doll collection, and what he loves to do with them is give them hair plugs. Now, where do you get the hair is my question, because you have all these paper dolls in that trunk there in your living room.
Yeah.
But the hair is real, am I right?
Most of it. Yeah. Most of it's real human hair. I go around to all the sports clips in town and ask them if I could sweep their floors for them for free. And they are a little weirded out, especially because I'm on roller skates. I found that you can sweep a lot better on roller skates.
But your shorts you wear while you're doing it are absolutely beautiful.
I don't want to risk any of the hair getting caught into the fabric that I'm wearing on my legs. So I do wear short shorts and no socks with my roller skates. And then I'll just sweep up all the hair, collect it, and then eventually my family and I will sit around the dinner table, dump the entire bucket of hair out onto the dinner table, move it all around, and then start to sort it by hair color.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we find a good match, and we name each color that we want. And we spend some time, a few hours a day and night, working on these paper dolls, and then just embedding these hairs into the heads of these paper dolls.
You'll have to post a picture on Instagram for everybody to see, because it is truly remarkable.
I will. Go to our Instagram when you see this. By the time you hear this, you will see a photo on our Instagram at Turned Up Podcast. And if I can't find one to take a picture of for copyright reasons, because a lot of them are made to order, I'll just draw one and we'll post it there.
So today we have a special guest. His name is also Jake. That's why Robert kept calling me Jake Jones.
Yeah.
His name is Jake Richards, standing in at 9 feet and 13 inches.
We have him in the notes. I've only had him in the notes as the other Jake. So it's Robert Jake and the other Jake. And I didn't know that Jake's last name was Richards until right now.
His name is also Jake, as I've introduced him to people around here. Jake is a songwriter he's been writing songs for many, many years. Jake is also a very important part of my history, not only one of my best friends for a long time, but also him and I were writing songs and recording together before I ever even thought that I could do it professionally. He's very, very good at what he does. and is in town doing some songwriting, and we're going to write some songs together this week as well. And I thought it'd be really great to have him in on this topic because it's something that he probably doesn't know anything about. And that is what we're hoping you listening also can feel the same way, that you just don't know a lot about this.
He'll be the voice of the people. Say hi, Jake.
Hey, everybody.
That was Jake.
It's my pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
I'm excited.
That's not what you said just a minute ago.
Well, I'm trying to, if I represent the people, most people would actually like to be here.
Okay.
Well, perfect.
Well, let's jump into it, man.
All right. Before we jump into the debate of analog versus digital and which is better, we should probably set a definition for what each of them are. What analog is, what digital is, and then we can decide which we like better and why. If there is a better. I don't know. I don't know where this is going to go. We're kind of shooting from the hip here, and we don't know where it's going to end up.
Well, it's kind of interesting in the research that you and I have been doing, as well as just any of our talks. We've even talked about this a little bit in our last couple of podcasts. We've even talked about it in other podcasts before. We tend to create analogies and comparisons to things that we can see because we are so visual,
right?
Just as human beings. And so there will be some of that in trying to explain this. And we will, of course, post photos and make sure that you know what we're talking about across our social media.
Yeah.
But yes, so there is analog and there is digital. Now, these two concepts apply to lots of things in our lives and in our world.
Oh yeah, of course. Not just music and sound.
But the principles are similar within music and sound. Analog really just meaning any sort of tangible, non-digitized. It is we are analog because we're real. You can touch us. We're people. We're analog. The world you see is analog. In music, analog really is referring to things like vinyl records, cassette tapes,
reel to reel in the studio, electricity flowing through wires. Technically is analog signal.
What it means is that it's never been digitized, which would be like CDs, MP3s, WAV files, any sort of streaming, where that is just essentially random bits of information that are formed together to create a code that a certain type of player can then read, decode it, and turn it into the sound that you hear.
It's a set of instructions basically teaching you how to draw the picture of the sound wave, or teaching the computer or the MP3 player, or whatever it is, how to decode the encoded instructions. So it sees the waveform go up and down a certain set of ways, and it makes a code or a sentence of tons of words, digital words, of ones and zeros saying, hey, this is how you draw that wave. And it tries to draw it back the way that it took the picture of. Now, we're going to get really nerdy here for just a second, but bear with us because we'll get back to normal human speak in a second. But the way that it takes these snapshots, if you will, of the waveform.
And this is digital, right?
Digital. Let's go. Yeah, digital realm. Two things we got to look at: bit depth and sample rate. And so, if you don't know what this is, which I don't expect you to, here's the layman's version of it. The sound wave goes up and down. Just picture a wave going up and down, a line, and bit depth is a snapshot of that wave in certain spots. So picture like you're tracing the arch in St. Louis, Missouri, United States. You're starting to go up
McDonald's.
this arch. Or McDonald's. Yeah, like McDonald's.
I'm hungry.
It's going up. You take a picture. Go up a little bit more. You take a picture. Go up a little bit more. You take a picture. At the top of the arch, take a picture. Starting coming down, take a picture. So you just took 4 or 5 pictures, but you're already over the top of the arch. Now, that would be a really, really, really low sample rate, but we'll get to that in a second. So the bit depth, let's just do some definitions here so it makes sense of what I'm saying. 8 bits in a byte, okay? Computer terms, software terms, whatever.
Well, we know now, like, we all have hard drives and thumb
gigabytes
drives.
and terabytes and megabytes and kilobytes and all that stuff.
That's just increments of bits.
So starting down in the very small bits, 8 bits are in a byte. A bit is a 1 or a 0. So if you have a digital word of 8 digits long, an 8-bit word, there's 8 digits, 8 ones or zeros. It could be 1 0 0 0 0 0 0. It could be 1 0 1 1 0 0 1 1, whatever. 8 of those. 16 bits is 2 bytes, which is a 16-digit word. A 24-bit word would be 24 digits long, all ones or zeros. So in essence, a 16-bit bit depth for music, for recording this audio waveform,
which CDs are 16-bit.
16-bit standard, yeah. Would be 65,536 unique values. So that's pretty detailed.
Oh, my brain hurts.
But I mean, if you go up to 24-bit, which I record at in the recording studio before it's dumbed down to 16-bit, that's 16,777,216 unique values. And so that's, I mean, multiplies that exponentially bigger or more high res, if you want to call it that. That's how detailed of a photo or snapshot it's taking of this waveform every time we take a picture. But how many pictures we take of this waveform per second would be the sample rate. So it's not taking 4 or 5 pictures every second, because that would just sound like a bunch of garbage and noise. You would never get the whole picture of a waveform going up and down. So actually, the standard for a CD is 44.1 kilohertz, 44,100 snapshots a second. So when the wave's going up and down, it's taking 44.1 thousand photos at whatever bit rate we talked about a minute ago, and being able to recreate it that well, that high of a res or low of res, depending on.
The best way I like to think of it, and I heard this in one of the first books I ever read when I was learning about this kind of stuff, is like a connect the dot. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
If you're trying to draw a picture of a horse and there's 4 dots on the page,
it's not going to look like a horse when you're done.
It's going to look like a square or some sort of 4-pointed something. Like, it's going to look very strange.
A diamond, yeah.
And not like a horse.
Nope, not at all.
And that would be a very, very low sample rate. Whereas if you had 70 million dots, that would be a very, very, very detailed picture of a horse. You would be able to see every little hair and everything on that horse. And so that is what the sample rate is. And, 44.1 is 44,100 samples per second. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, we're talking CD audio, which, are CDs dead? Are they not? I don't know. Go back and listen to the last couple of episodes. But that's definitely kind of the standard consumer quality of.
That's like our reference point.
Which actually, I had I mixed an album 2 years ago and sat in the mastering studio with the mastering engineer, who went on a total rant saying there is no reason why we are not, why 24-bit 48 kilohertz is not the standard now, which would be double.
I don't get it either, because video uses that, and so does a lot of broadcast audio. Will broadcast at 48, and so
our internet is fast enough to stream high definition audio.
Yeah,
there's no reason why. Our internet is fast enough to stream high definition video.
Yeah,
how is it not fast enough to stream high definition audio?
Well, it is. And when they developed the technology for CDs, what was it, in late 70s, early 80s, that we talked about in the last couple podcasts?
The discs were too small to have that.
Yeah,
higher resolution.
Now we could put, lots of songs. I mean, space is cheap now. Digital space, that's why you're finding terabyte hard drives to the same cost you found, an 8 gigabyte hard drive a decade ago.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe a little bit more than that, but space is cheap, and it's really easy to make it, and lots of manufacturers are making it. So finding a way to make high resolution discs or other ways to distribute high resolution music should be cheap and easy and efficient. But again, that might be a debate for our last 2 podcasts that we did. So go back and listen to those, and we kind of touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Are CDs dead? Yes, no, maybe. I don't know. So today we're going to talk about digital versus analog. That was basically a rundown of how digital mimics the analog waveform. The analog waveform is going to be as pure as you can get. That is the waveform. And digital is just trying to take a snapshot of it, mimic that the best it can. And that might be all the argument you need to say, well, it's not analog, so I'm done. That's not perfect. But there are some cases that we'll make here in a minute that might say digital is better.
And back to my brief explanation of what is analog earlier, I did a terrible job, and I don't want to get too heady. You can always Google what analog audio is. However, what you're listening to right now, what your ears are hearing, that is analog audio. I mean, you can't hear digital, period. You can't hear it. It's just information.
Ones and zeros.
So every device that's playing any sort of digital audio has to have a digital to analog converter, whether it's your iPhone or you're listening on a very expensive studio setup. It has something that is able to decode those numbers and values and turn them back into an analog form. And that's where this argument really starts to get interesting, because you're taking these connect the dots, and your digital to analog converter is looking at those dots saying, okay, the audio that was recorded, I think this is what they were trying to make it sound like, and it reassembles it and plays it through your speakers. This is why when you hear a low quality MP3 or something like that, it can sound funky, and the lower the quality, the weirder it's going to sound, until eventually it just sounds like just a distorted, jumbled up mess.
And when you're saying lower quality, that's basically meaning a lower resolution version or representation of the waveform, meaning they're cutting out more of those dots to save space. So if your argument is digital is better because I can fit 1,000 songs on my MP3 player rather than 8 songs on a vinyl LP, right? Because then your argument is digital is better because you can fit 1,000 songs, and those songs might sound less hi-fi than the vinyl. Those songs might sound choppy or wishy-washy, or the cymbals might not even sound like cymbals anymore. But that might not be important to you if you're not huge into cymbals. I don't know. You're just like, I want to hear the lyrics of 1,000 songs, then that's perfect for you.
Well, and like the old video game systems, those were 8-bit.
Oh, yeah.
And so those 8-bit sounds, it's actually kind of funny. In popular music today,
We're all going back that way, aren't we?
we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy the greatest, biggest, best equipment that can record at the highest possible quality imaginable, just so that we can create sounds that sound like they were on little tiny kilobyte hard drives inside of vintage game systems. And for myself, I will try to keep this sort of connect the dots coloring page analogy consistent. A hard drive would be like the size of the page.
Okay.
So back in the day, even 18 years ago, the year 2000, our pages were a lot smaller, and so we could not fit as many dots on the page.
Right.
But today our pages are so enormously big, and what you're trying to do as the artist is draw a beautiful picture. That would be the song. And then rather than selling the picture as it is, which would be like a vinyl, right? It's the actual picture.
Right.
Instead, we want to sell digital representation. So we're just going to sell a connect the dots so that at home you can put it in your automatic connect the dotter, and it will connect those dots and print out the same picture that I painted at home. Is a good sort of thing. And so now that our page can be as large as we need it to be, we're able to have much higher quality. So anyway, just another analogy I thought of.
I hope that explains the digital versus analog waveform to you, if you didn't know already what it was. I mean, Jake and I work in recording studios and have worked with these kind of mediums for years, and we have to understand it to know what we're getting into the computers versus out of the computers, or onto the tape machine and out of the tape machine, and how to get it back from the tape machine to the computer to your earphones, whatever. We have to understand how that all correlates. And sometimes explaining it's tough if you haven't had years of experience or spent hours online researching it or took classes about it or whatever. So I think now that we have that set, one of the biggest debates that I hear in this case of digital versus analog and which is better is mobility. You can't take record players with you. So what are your thoughts on that? Let's just hear the room.
I mean, you're totally right. Obviously, you can't take a record player with you, and you can. I mean, they're making little suitcase record players, but still, you're not going to plop down in your seat on an airplane and open up your Krausley or whatever the lower end record, suitcase record players, set it on your tray in front of you and pull out your collection of
Do you
vinyls.
mind? Sorry, just have some elbow room here. Can you hand me that? Stop bumping the needle.
Sorry, the turbulence is really messing up my... No, I mean, of course, digital wins in that realm. Any way you look at it, it's a beautiful thing, and I think probably the most important thing when it comes to digital, going back to sample rates and bit depths, I think it's just, in my opinion, as a music producer, as an engineer, just making sure that we're getting higher quality of audio. You can't stream when you don't have internet. So
Ooh,
you have
right.
to download.
Yeah.
Is your device that you're listening to the music on, is it large enough to store the audio at a high enough quality where you can run out of space by downloading 10 songs,
And when you say MP3 player, I mean, if you reach in your pocket or your purse or on your desk or nightstand, wherever you are right now,
most likely what you're listening to this on.
yeah, it's your phone. And everybody's phones, I'd say 99% of everybody's phones that are coming out right now have the ability to store and play back MP3s or M4As or whatever sound file, even if it's wave files, whatever you've got, it's probably got a little bit of room on there to store at least an album's worth of songs. I'm sure we can hold way more than that, depending on what phone you have, but you have them with you all the time. So are you satisfied with that? Do you have the space for that, or would you rather have it for photos or text messages or Candy Crush or whatever?
So again, obviously, yes, the portability of analog. However, I mean, cassette tapes.
Ooh, there was
are
the Walkman.
analog,
Yeah.
and they're portable. However, while there are still some bands that recently started putting their music on cassette tape, it's still a big bulky thing you have to carry around. I did see a mock-up of a new portable cassette player that was really cool. It looks just like a little armature that like clips onto the cassette tape and can
Oh, yeah.
play. Yeah, but I don't think they ever actually made it, or they haven't made it yet, and I could be wrong. And if you know,
Crowdfunding or something. I don't know.
yeah, it's a great idea. Even still, you still have to store the media. You have to store cassette tapes.
Yep.
You can old-fashioned make your own mixtapes, and you have two sides of a tape to do that on.
So you are limited by size and space on that tape.
and size and space on you in a physical realm. You can only carry. I can't carry 20,000 cassette tapes with me anywhere I go.
I used to have this turquoise blue zip up canvas nylon-y feeling bag that had hard plastic slots and maybe had 15 cassette tapes I could carry with it, and would take that with me everywhere. And like, what cassettes did I bring today? Let's find out. You never know.
Road trip.
But that brings me to what you said. Sorry to cut you off. Kind of brings us to the next a huge point, a huge exception to this rule is storing those cassette tapes because they're very susceptible to magnetism taking the sound off the tape. So analog is also very susceptible to wearing down and degradation over time.
Loss is the proper word.
Loss of audio quality. So right off the press, right out of the package, right from the store, you open it up, you put it on your vinyl record player or whatever it may be, and you can hear it the best it's going to sound. Because every time you play that, every time a needle sits down in the track or dust falls on it, or you hit rewind or play again on the cassette tape, it's scrubbing it a little bit.
It will never sound as good.
And I mean, even
as
though
it did the first time.
you won't physically hear a difference between the first and second and the third time, but if you had a way of remembering what it sounded like the first time and you play it 10 times and listen to it, it'll be a little more muffled. It'll have a little less frequency response. The highs won't be as bright. The lows won't be as bassy. And then over time, even in recording studios, with reels of tape, you couldn't store them next to other reels of tape or next to speakers that had huge magnets in them because the sound would kind of drift. And so even on the different lanes, if you want to call them that, on the cassette tapes, the tracks, if you put the click track, the deep doot 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 that everybody in the studio was tracking to, too close to something else like the vocals, you would hear it bleed through. So when you mute that really piercing metronome track on the cassette, on the reel to reel before it presses, you would still hear it in the vocals or anything that's near it. So you usually put that at the end of the reel, skip a track or two, and then you record everything else that you actually want to keep. Otherwise, you're going to hear it bleed through. And so that's one of the problems with the tangible medium is you have to watch out for that. The vinyl, the grooves will start wearing down, and eventually, over tons of plays, it just won't sound the same at all.
Well, other Jake and I were hanging out last night in my studio. I have a record player, and we were playing some old records, and we definitely experienced some of that degradation because there's some great old Led Zeppelin records, but it does not sound great.
But there's something about the dust that lands on the vinyl and the scratches and the tiny little things that happen to it and gives it that, when you think of a record player playing, you hear that little, the little hiss and the tape noise, or the hiss and the noise from the needle. The crackle. I like it. Like, and it might be nostalgic.
People add it to recordings now.
Oh yeah. It's one of those things where I'm asked probably once a year to add that crackle into something. And it's hard to say no because I want to hear it, but then I'm like, I'm faking it. I'm faking what I really like.
Yeah.
But it is weird. It's weird, especially in the studio when you are asked to redo and recreate the sounds that are probably not the sounds you really wanted to have when you initially recorded it, like those 80s samples and tape saturation on those kicks and snares to make them sound kind of gritty. Like, we didn't want that when we first recorded them, and now we're trying to get that, so we're trying to emulate the stuff that we didn't want the first time. There are noise buttons on the plugins we use in the studios to emulate the analog,
the hum from the
electricity
wall.
and noise from the vinyl emulators, and it's just, are we going backwards? Do we like it, and that's where so this is progression, or is this going back and not? I don't know. I don't know.
It's crazy. Well, so contrary to the analog medium, that is very prone to quality loss, digital is lossless. It can be laterally copied and not
okay,
lose.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So if I have a wave file that is 44.1, K by 16-bit,
yeah,
and I duplicate it, its duplicate will sound exactly the same.
Right.
And I which is kind of funny because we create master tracks off of our works, and we try to get people to use those master tracks or whatever, but they're even still copying those over to mastering engineers.
Oh yeah.
And they're copies and copies and copies of copies and copies of copies. The version you're hearing is not the literal version of data that came off of your mix engineer's computer, laptop these days.
Oh, right.
But yeah, they are virtually lossless. Now you can lower the quality of it, and then it will lose some of its bits and its samples. So something that I want to talk about is bandwidth, and we've already kind of talked about it a few times with the sample rates and all of that. That's bandwidth. Similar to the connect the dots in today's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram world, I think we all have a good understanding of high and low resolution images. Now, whether you know what that means or whether you know the technicalities of it, you've seen a low resolution photo. You try to make it full screen and it's just blurry.
Yeah, really. And you can even see the squares, almost like the pixels that are enlarged. Like, that's just a turquoise square that doesn't look like an eyeball.
Right, exactly. And so pixels and these samples are very much the same in that sort of respect. So a big difference between analog and digital is the audio bandwidth. With analog, when it's recorded analog, when it's recorded to that tape, it is a true representation of the audio in that it's not dumbed down. It's unlimited, the quality. You record it into a microphone. That microphone has something called the diaphragm that physically vibrates, and then it sends those little electrical signals in real time to a magnetic tape, essentially, cutting out some unimportant details for the topic. And then those magnetic, those are sound waves, and then they can be played back literally exactly as they were recorded.
Right.
And then I can take that and I can make it small, low quality, or I can make it a high quality, whatever I want to do with it, because it's analog. Whereas with digital, whatever I record it at, whatever the bit rate is, or the bit depth, or the sample rate is when I record it, that is the highest quality that will ever be.
Right.
So
now you can add, for our purposes, dots. You can add that to it, but it's not enhancing dots. It's more of multiplying dots that are already there. So it's not making the quality any better. It's just saying it's higher resolution, which is stupid. And I don't know why it's even allowed to be done, but yes.
Right. It's like if I have 3 dots and I connect them.
Sure.
What do I have? triangle, but that's supposed to be a square. So if I add a fourth dot,
You still have a triangle.
I still have a triangle because all I can do is add a dot somewhere along the line where the triangle is.
Yep.
And I can add as many dots as I want, and doing air quotes here, raising the quality, but it's still a triangle that's supposed to be a square. I'm going to get an inaccurate representation no matter what. Whereas with analog, there are no dots. It is just a square.
Right.
And I can then take that and add a billion little dots. So that way, once it gets duplicated, it can be dumbed down or whatever, but it will always, I always have my original analog square to go back to. So that's a big deal. I was reading an article on the Klipsch website. They have a great blog post about analog versus digital. You can check it out. Klipsch is a company that makes headphones and speakers, all kinds
everything.
of things. And I really liked a quote that they had here because it's kind of funny. It says, why does bandwidth matter? It really depends on what you're listening to your music with. If you have a pair of overpriced earbuds that cost $8 to make, but you paid $200 to cover the company's advertising budget,
Beats.
then you're probably okay with mediocre bandwidth. You probably don't care whether this was analog or digital or how high quality, because most likely you're listening to a really terrible quality MP3. On the contrary, if you've invested in really high quality audio reproduction speakers, then the greater the bandwidth, the greater potential you have for sound. But kind of playing into this argument of which is better, 99.9% of all humans don't have a super high quality. I'm looking at your Wall O speakers over here, and I have one as well.
Yeah.
These allow us to listen to insanely high quality audio, which is important for what we do. It allows us to kind of find every little tiny imperfection. But that's because that's our job. That's what we do.
Sure.
Most people, when I'm listening to music, my favorite thing to listen to music on is my Apple EarPods.
Yeah. You have them all the time.
And I like the way they sound. They're not going to be able to tell a difference between a super high quality wave or a mediocre quality MP3. Now, low quality, everybody can tell the difference.
Yeah. You know what? We should post a link on our social media accounts to a low quality MP3, maybe another MP3, and then like a high quality wave of the same audio source. And then you guys can hear everything that we're doing and talking about, and it'll make sense to you as far as the blurriness of the audio.
Yeah, we're going to post a 10-second clip of an As We Ascend song, actually.
Let's do it. That'll work.
And you'll definitely be able to hear, and we'll point you in the right direction at the end of the podcast. So I mentioned in that, whether you're recording, if you're recording analog, then it can be as high quality as you record it, or it can go up or down. Whereas if you record it digital, it will only be whatever you record it at. So what is the digital versus analog recording process?
Well, sound waves are analog. So no matter where we're starting or where we're going to end up, we're starting with an analog sound source. So moving airwaves back and forth is what the sound wave is doing. And the sound pressure levels are affected and making it louder or quieter, whatever. And we are recording that into a microphone. So we're already starting off analog. And then which direction we choose to go with that is what we're going to do. We're going to either take it digital to Pro Tools or Logic or Reason or Cubase or whatever you're recording with on your computer, or we're going to a tape machine like a Studer or Atari or whatever that has a reel of tape on it that can record up to 24 tracks of music at once. There's a hybrid of this where a lot of studios, the trend is to record drums to tape, or maybe record other instruments, and maybe all the instruments to tape, and then dump it into Pro Tools or your computer or whatever, which has to go through a process of converting it from analog to digital. The whole thing we've been talking about, it has to develop this code, has to encode it, and then have a way to decode it in the computer to make sense of all this mumbo jumbo, all these different code numbers, ones and zeros. So there are different converters which pride themselves, we convert better than other converters. And there's a whole debate on that, which I have heard the difference. I've tried several converters, I've owned several converters, and I've landed on certain ones that I like. But I've also recorded and mixed and produced things without having high-end converters that sound just fine. Also, when I choose to record in the digital realm, which I most of the time do, I record at a 24-bit 44.1 kilohertz sample rate and resolution. That's what I choose to do because for rock music and pop music and country music that I'm producing, writing, and recording, I don't hear enough of a difference in the end product to record at any higher resolution. It doesn't make sense. There are people in town who record at 88. It's even higher than that, 192K. And if I'm not doing a symphony or like a solo singer acoustic guitar thing, I won't record that high because I don't see the point in it.
Well, and to that, something I want to tell our listeners is that the reason why it can be advantageous not to record that high is because every time you bump up from, say, 44.1 to 48, your file sizes get enormous. They get much bigger, and these songs we're not just talking about 8 or 10 tracks at that resolution.
Oh, no. And pop and rock stuff that we're doing, Jake, you and I know this, but we've got upwards of over 100 tracks sometimes. 60 tracks is pretty average, I guess, for what I'm doing these days. And
in the digital realm, each one of those tracks is a 3-minute to 4-minute long, file. 24-bit 44.1K file, some mono, some stereo, each one times 60. That means a session is already enormous. Suddenly you start raising the resolution of that. You're adding more information to every single one of those tracks.
Right.
It just gets enormous. So you have to say, for the sake of the physical hard drive space that I have, is the bump in sound quality worth using up that extra space? So then that's why you were just saying, for the music that you're doing, the music that I'm doing as well, 99% of the time, the answer is no. The difference in sound quality is not audible with that much stuff going on, and it saves me terabytes of hard drive space.
Right. And to the next point, directly from what you're saying is, even though we started out with an analog signal, and we're now in the digital world, we have to go back to an analog signal. We have to get back to a speaker pushing air to our ear holes. And so we have to have conversion happening on the way out too. So even if I'm recording at the really, really, really highest resolution that my computer can handle in the studio, we have to dumb it down to get it onto a CD, or dumb it down even further to get it into an MP3 format, because MP3s aren't going to handle the very high resolution that I'm recording. And you can't put those files on a CD because it won't play back in any CD player, which is set to decode 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz wave files. So does it matter? Because we're going to be taking out those dots anyway. I mean, it's kind of cool. That's why photographers shoot in high
So I was about to say,
raw
I think it kind
resolution.
of, it matters to that extent.
To a point. And I found my threshold to be the 24-bit 44.1K file size. Like that's what I do. That's where I found my threshold to be. Some people find theirs to be a little higher and they'll take out the dots from there. Some people are like, well, it's only going to be CD quality, 44.1, 16-bit. Might as well just record at that. I do hear a difference. And I'd rather have a little higher quality. But again, for rock, like buzzy guitars and loud drums and cymbals, I feel like I'm at a good spot where I like it. And I feel like most people who listen on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, that they're buying CDs, even if they're making them anymore, that they're hearing quality good enough to keep me hired by the next band, I guess.
And I'm sure there are audio engineers listening to this right now,
I'm probably gnashing
their
off.
teeth, saying, "What? You record at 44.1? That is a debate for another day." And please, actually, we would love to talk about it.
Oh, please! I want to debate. I would love to, because I mean, sell me on it. Pretend I'm holding a sign up that says, "I feel like that's the best. Teach me otherwise." I don't know. I think that's the trend right now, right?
All right, Steven Crowder. Well, I also want to jump back really quick. So you mentioned recording drums to tape and then dumping it into a computer. There's a reason for that, though. And what is it?
I like, and a lot of people like, the way that the tape naturally compresses the transients of the drums, which means, oh man,
it just sounds different.
It does. It changes. It warps the sound of the drums a little bit in a way that's pleasing to my ears for certain applications. There are certain times where I want it to be a little different, and that won't make sense to do that because I'll be trying to fix it later. But for editing purposes as well, it's tougher because you're recording linearly. You're recording from point A to point B, and you can't easily stop and go punch something in without ruining either the quality of the tape or the sound, or matching it up just perfectly, because digitally you can see the wave files on the computer screen. You can move things around, take part A, put it back before part C, and put B after D, and whatever.
Well, going back to my junior high days even, you know, the way we pirated music back in those days was to have a cassette tape in your your boombox and wait for your song to come on and then hit record. It would be like having to try and, I accidentally stopped recording the second half of that song.
Waiting
so the
for it to
next
come on
time
again.
it plays, I have to hit record. I have to find the spot on the cassette tape where it was and then hit record at the right time so that I can get the other half of the song. It's just not that easy.
And you can cut and splice tape, which I had to learn how to do, or you cut it diagonally so it doesn't make a big glitch when you're playing back. It's kind of a delayed glitch, so you don't really notice it, and then you tape it on the back side of the tape, and there's a whole process to it. It's possible. It's not convenient. It's not easy, and the fact of the matter is it's really expensive now, because I think there's only one tape manufacturer still around that's making tape for reel-to-reel decks. I don't know. And there's one place I know of in Nashville to buy it, and it's expensive. Like, you're paying $100 a reel.
Wow.
Yeah, so is it worth it? I don't know. There are tape emulators on my computer.
I was
that
about
work
to say, you have to
fine.
really want that sound, and you have to really, be able to tell the difference. And there are people who say that they can, and people who swear by it and would not ever have it any other way.
There's a difference. It just depends on whether or not you care enough to, or if you. It doesn't matter. Does it matter to you?
Well, there's a whole other artistic side of it as well that comes into play when you're talking about, I'm looking at your rack. We're actually going into physical analog API preamps right now,
right?
That are great. And I know, at my studio, I have a digital version of that through my UAD software. And I have to say, okay, is one better than the other? Sure, they're different. I'm sure they're different. And I'm sure each one of these three preamps that we have plugged in, each sound different from one another. But is it better? And then as an artist, I have to say, well, I tend to like analog recording better, not necessarily because I think it sounds a lot better, but because it's more inspiring. I feel more inspired when I'm plugging into a piece of analog gear, when I can see the needle move in real time, when I make a noise or whatever I'm doing. That inspires me. It puts my head in a space that says, oh, it's time to create.
Yeah.
And for that reason, if your entire career hinges on you being inspired and being creative and coming up with this stuff, maybe it's a worthy investment. Maybe analog's the best choice, even though, I see here you have 4 1176s.
That's a compressor.
And
studio mumbo jumbo.
It's like the tried and true workhorse compressor. They sound fantastic. Each one of those sounds different, and I'm sure if they haven't already, one of them at least is going to have a dirty volume pot or potentiometer.
A button. Yeah.
A button. Yeah. It's gonna start crackling and making noises when you move it, and you're either gonna have to get it fixed or work around it. However, the digital version of it that you have on your computer, you can have 1,000 of them, and none of them will ever go bad.
Yeah.
So that's the advantage of having a digital version of this analog equipment. Even I don't know. There's just so many different factors that kind of play into it. So what's better, analog or digital?
Yes,
I know that. I know that digital is a heck of a lot easier to edit. It's a lot easier to work with.
It is, and honestly, I rely a lot on my eyeballs when I'm mixing a song, which sounds totally backwards, and I hate myself for saying that, but I do. I look at waveforms and I can tell where I'm going to need to do certain things just by the way they look. But that's an advantage too, because you can't do that with a tape reel-to-reel machine when you're recording in the studio, and the same way you couldn't do it with the cassette tapes when you're trying to record your favorite Boyz II Men song. So I rely on my eyeballs, and a lot of times I have to tell myself, and I've made a habit of this when I'm mixing, it's to close my eyes and listen to the song before I start mixing it, and then when I think I'm done mixing it. And if I do it those 2 times, which literally takes up 7 minutes of my life combined, I hear things that before the song's mixed, I can kind of hear an idea I envision of where it needs to go. I hate the way that it sounds a little hippie when I say let the song tell me what to do. But the song kind of talks to me and says, hey, this is where we need to go with it. And then at the end of the mix,
Those are the voices in your head, Robert.
there are two of them up there. No, so then I get to the end of the mix where I think, okay, I'm ready. I'm done with this. Let's move on. And I'm like, nope, let's take 3.5 minutes. Listen to the song with the eyes closed. I do, and I'll hear little things that I'm like, oh, maybe I can just move this a little bit. Or maybe I'll have a whole vision of creativity pop up that says, hey, let's add a whole loop here that I had no idea I needed to add or something. I don't know. So yeah, relying on your eyeballs when you should be listening to with your ears can be an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time. But you can't do that with purely analog recordings.
I am so proud of you, Robert.
For?
The way you've been able to adapt over the centuries to prior to even being able to record sounds, and now here you are, you're a professional recording engineer and producer. You've come such a long way from banging nuts and rocks together to learning how to use technology and adapting to society and not being opposed to change.
I just have my 9-year-old son teach me. And yes, I did have a 9-year-old son this late in life. I didn't have him when he was 9. I had him when he was born, but over the last 9 years, he's grown to be 9.
Man, so it's so what's better? I'm going to plant my flag and hopefully not be stoned in the street for saying this. I'm going to say I think today digital is better. And here's why. Here's my case.
Let's hear it.
We can record at high enough qualities that it's the difference is inaudible to 99.9999% of all human beings. We have hard drive space that's big enough and processors that are fast enough to be able to handle that.
Yep.
So it's almost as good, but as far as most human beings are concerned, it is just as good as analog when it's recorded. We have an advantage with digital in that we can edit and make sounds much better. We can re-record things more quickly. And honestly, in recording studios all over the world, budgets are shrinking. Everything is shrinking financially when it comes to recording sound. So we have to be able to do our job quicker. And it takes a long time if you're going to record analog to get it right. And it's not a better form of artistry. It's just a different form of artistry. When it comes to, playing that audio back, distributing digital files is way easier. It's better. It's lossless. You and I can listen to the same song on iTunes Music today, and we're both hearing it at the same quality. We can listen to it again tomorrow, and again, it's going to be the same quality. And in 50 years, we can go back and listen to that same song. It's going to be the same quality. Or it's not going to get fried in the sun if you leave it in your trunk. It's not going to get melted. The needle's not going to drive grooves into it. None of that's going to happen. And the other thing is, you have to look at the consumer, the people who are buying music, the people who enjoy listening to music. Do any of these people care whether it's a high quality WAV file, whether it's the quality of audio that comes with a cassette or record, or whether it is a low quality MP3? And the answer, the proof is in the pudding. Digital streaming has now outsold vinyl, cassettes, CDs, any physical, digital or analog form of media. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, the reason vinyl is picking up in sales is not because the quality of the audio is better. I think the quality of the audio is just different. It does something unique. But even more so, it's the experience. It's sitting down at a record player, having to physically take the record out and experience the smell, the look, the feel of the case, the cardboard, all of it. And then you put it on, and then something is physically happening. And it's that thought that there is something real about this. Whenever we wake up and first thing in the morning, we talk to our friends via a digital medium. our friends aren't really talking to us. What they're doing is sending random signals into their computer that are converting it into words. It's going into a server, taking that information. It's traveling digitally through a pipeline into your computer that your computer then turns back into images and back into words or your phone or whatever. It's all the same idea where it's just random digital information that is being encoded and decoded so that way we can communicate. I mean, everything that we do is hands off.
It's true.
You can order your groceries hands off.
That's true.
All of it. And so here is now a way that we can listen to music that is as hands-on as can possibly be. You have to physically put the arm down onto the record or else no sound is going to come out. And so that's the beauty of vinyl. That's why that's personally why I believe vinyl is making a resurgence. That's why I enjoy it.
It's almost an exaggerated even expression of hands-on, because when you bought a CD, it was 4 inches, and it's like an exaggerated version of that. You're not just buying a physical copy. You're buying how big is that vinyl? It's like 14 by 14. It's
pretty big.
That's big, and compared to just flipping it on with your phone, I think I would plant my flag in the same place. I think I would say digital is probably the way to go now, even though along the way, in my experience, back when digital was first starting to take over, file types hadn't been established yet, and you'd open up your computer, and if your ones and zeros got corrupted, you didn't get to listen to just part of that song. That song was corrupted.
Right. Yeah.
It's not playable. Or if you didn't have the drivers, or I remember whenever television went digital, and used to in the old days, if you're streaming.
I remember you and I having this
analog
exact conversation. I think about it every time a bad storm comes through and I'm trying to watch.
You have this analog
TV.
signal, and you used to be able to watch TV fuzzy. Remember?
Now you can still hear it. You can still see it. It may not be the perfect signal,
you could
but
see it. It was still there, but it just degraded.
Yeah.
But I remember whenever digital television first came out, we're standing there in the living room and trying to watch a show that has a bad signal, and that signal is corrupted. It is unwatchable. There is nothing about it that can be
maybe
captured.
some little random squares here and there.
Yeah, squares here and there. The audio would jump in and jump out. They're completely unwatchable. But now a lot of that stuff's kind of ironed out, So speaking to experience, as things get further along, I think digital's the way to go.
Maybe that's why digital got such a bad rap, is because it kind of, I think especially in audio, I think Napster kind of forced the digital consumption. Now CDs excluding, because they were already around.
Right.
But Napster really forced everyone into digital downloading and which eventually led to streaming. I think you might have even been able to stream back then. I actually didn't have a computer for a long time.
Very crudely,
but it kind of forced the world into that, maybe before the technology was really there. And that's why digital definitely caught such a bad rap. Oh, it's low quality, it's terrible. Because sometimes, because it was peer-to-peer, you would finally find your favorite song, and then it just sounded so bad. Not that I ever illegally downloaded music.
Jake Jones never illegally downloaded music. I fixed it.
Oh, thank you.
I think, I'm going to side the same way you guys did. That because from where I sit, for what I do for a living and have for 15 years, producing audio, I've learned, and we've collectively learned as a group of producers and engineers to manipulate sounds in the digital realm. We've used these plugins and we've used these sources in a way to manipulate them in a way that we like, that's pleasing to our ears, and where we don't track the tape every day. We don't track through analog consoles every day. We use what we have in a way to make the sounds sound like what we want them to sound like at the end. We know the process it's going to go through to get all the way to your earbuds. So when you're listening in your car or on the subway or while walking your dog, we know how it's going to sound. And so we use our digital processes to make it sound the way we want to. And if that's emulating analog, so be it, because we know how those plugins work and how it reacts to the sound waves, and we'll use it in a way that we want to use it. I do like vinyl. I even like cassette tapes.
I do too.
I do too. I want to do the next As We Ascend record on cassette. Be a lot
I'm
cheaper,
down.
too.
Be fun.
I'm down. And so, yeah, for distribution purposes and for even referencing purposes. So if you want to send a song to somebody like, hey, let me know what you think real quick. I could email a rough mix to somebody rather than let me just burn this to CD or print this to an album or whatever it needed to be. Let me wrap this tape up and have an intern drive it across town. And hopefully the post office won't delete everything on it when it goes through their x-ray system or whatever. I don't know. To send it to LA to let someone hear it. I'm like, oh no, I didn't like it. Send it back. Add this to it. Like that would take weeks. I don't know. Right now I can drop it in a Dropbox folder and they'll have it instantaneously. Listen to it in 3 minutes. I'll have notes back. Say, hey, try this. You know what I mean? I don't know. For what I'm doing, I'm digital, and I'm not low quality MP3 digital. I'm a high class man. I want to hear WAV files at very minimum. FLAC, which is lossless, it's just hard to find. It's a type of file which is supposed to be very, 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 very similar to analog. Hence the name lossless. I like that. Finding something to play that easily is not readily available, but
The new iPhones actually play FLAC.
for real?
Yep.
Huh. Well, dang it. I guess I can. So, but yeah, I like listening to CD quality audio and high quality WAV files and stuff on my studio monitors and in my car. So I do like hearing good sounds and hearing the timbre of them and hearing the space between them and hearing the noise in the room. I like that. That's pleasing to me as an artist. But yeah, the convenience of digital needs to be there for me.
It's funny, I just had this thought. Ironically, the reason I believe people like, or another reason I believe people like vinyl records is not because it's a higher quality audio. I think people enjoy vinyl because it sounds like a lower quality audio. Especially
sounds
the
old
vinyls are. I mean, we just read off the numbers in our last podcast. The best selling vinyl was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, you're not, I don't know of anyone doing any repressings of that one. That's coming off of, those are old vinyls.
Old sales. Yep.
So, yeah. And shout out to Colt Caparoon, who I hope is listening to this episode. But I heard him, he commented on we actually read his comment, but just talking about CDs and should they die or not. And, he said, what did he say? Evolve, change, something like that. Change or die.
Yeah.
But I think it's the right attitude to have. You can resist it for a long time, and all you're really doing is just slowing down progress as it pertains to technology.
You're delaying the inevitable, which, I mean, we need progress in order to get to the next best thing, which hopefully really is best and not the next, what suffered through thing. I don't know. But I think vinyl's coming back a little bit too. We talked about that in the podcast, last week's podcast, the week before, a little bit. And not just in hipster circles. It's coming back around. We pressed the As We Ascend thing to vinyl for very limited pressing, and I love it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, listened to it last night.
It's different, but it's cool. And it's the same mix. I mean, similar masters, but the same mix. And I like it. I don't know. I like vinyl. But yeah, put me in digital. So that's 3 out of 3 in the room for digital. What are your thoughts? I'd like to know personally.
Digital versus analog.
Yeah, Twitter or Instagram.
At Turned Up Podcast.
Or on the Facebook.
.com/ Turned Up Podcast. We really, sorry, http://www.facebook.com/ Turned Up Podcast.
In your browser's address bar, left click. Oh, man.
And of course, turneduppodcast.com. You can find links to all those socials, as well as mine and Robert's websites, where you can listen to the work that we do and get a good feel for the kind of stuff that we're producing and engineering and mixing and all that fun stuff, the artists that we're working with. We've had so much great talent in the last few months. I'm excited for those albums to come out.
It's cool kind of seeing them hit the charts now and hit radio waves. You always have high hopes for your children, your musical babies.
Your musical babies.
Go out into the real world. Go ahead and grow up.
Yes, and then also check our socials right now, and you will find links to SoundCloud, where you can hear examples of a high quality wave, a high quality MP3, and then a low quality MP3 that you can play side by side and listen to the differences and know exactly what we're talking about and realize, oh yeah, I've heard that sound before. So that's what that is. That's just a crappy MP3.
You're also going to want to check out Instagram for my picture of a paper doll with real hair.
I'm really excited to see that.
I'm interested to see it myself.
Are you getting a haircut today, Robert?
I need one, but I know where that hair is going to go. It's going to be one really hairy paper doll.
Shaving his leg hair again.
No, thanks though.
Well, a huge thank you to the other Jake Richards, for sitting in and listening and adding his 2 cents
it was my
here.
pleasure. Thanks for letting me be a fly on the wall most of the time and then speak to what I know, which is my experience.
Well, thanks for being here, other Jake and regular Jake.
And thank you, Real Sound Productions, for giving us this platform, as well as editing and mixing this podcast. A huge thank you to Mr. Venable for lending his expertise.
The crowd goes wild.
In the more vintage arts of recording. Next episode, he's going to talk to us about how they used to multi-track record onto
bark,
tree bark. Back when they were just discovering how to make sounds.
Oh, you should hear this one.
They'd just grown legs and
no one else did.
Arms.
like a side journey. Have you ever seen the videos of when they digitally examined an old pot and were able to pull some semblance of sound?
Okay, so this
off of that pot while he was turning it on the wheel.
So they were turning. Yes, this is really cool. They were turning clay pots. Like this is like back in like Pompeii days.
Yeah.
And they, for some of the art, they would use like a feather or something very thin and small to create lines around the pots for decoration.
Right.
And naturally, the sound pressure, the sounds in the room caused the
tiny vibrations.
And they actually
Really
went back
cool.
and read them and played them back. You can hear the room.
Oh,
It sounds like mumbling human voices.
who would even think to do that?
It's crazy.
Genius. That is awesome. I mean, you can probably do it with still ones that are made today, like handmade ones that have tiny vibrations from.
Yeah.
Whoa. I mean, that'd be noisy, but
You can hear the room 2,000 or 3,000 years ago.
that's so good.
I forgot about that. That's really cool.
Sorry, that was a side journey.
No, that's a great journey to go on. But yeah, thanks to Real Sound and for Jake and myself. I guess I'm thanking me for being here. That's weird.
You're welcome for being there.
Thank you.
Thank me for being here today.
Thank me. I'm welcome.
Well, I'm gonna let me run. I stole it from Pee Wee. So you're gonna want to tune in next week while we talk about something really awesome. Such a surprise for all of us that we don't even know what we're doing yet.
Surprise.
Surprise us. We have some really cool things we're working on. We don't know which one's gonna hit the hopper first. But anyway, you don't want to spill any beans because I'm not sure about this one yet. But I think it'll be cool. As always, Nashville signing out.
Peace.